Welcome to NomadMedia, Automotive Tales, where we tell vehicle stories, a little bit of history, and some unique and personal experiences. Let's get right into it. So for today we have Mike Dempsey and his 2007 Shelby GT. Mike, I met you a while back at a car show, and this thing, man, it's a nice car. It's really cool. You told me some of the history on it, and I couldn't wait to sit down with you and actually get it from you, like the whole story. And I'm sure everybody that's been enjoying my videos thus far is going to enjoy this story. So let me just hand it off to you, and we'll move right on into it.
Thank you very much. My car is something I've wanted since about 1964. I didn't know at the time I would get the chance to own a Shelby, but you did know the name Shelby in 1964. I didn't realize how important that name was. The name grew and I grew, but I always had for lack of a better word, a thing for Mustangs. I remember where I was at when I saw my first one. And to be honest, I have a Mustang that when I do go, it's going to be my hearse. Mm-hmm. So I'm as Mustang addicted as a man can be. And it started in all places in front of Lakewood Elementary School in October of 1964.
So you got right there at the beginning
the
of
Mustang had
production.
Just came out. And you got to imagine the Yankees, mm-hmm. the Cardinals, daytime World Series game. Mm-hmm. And I was in a position to open the doors for the kids when they would leave school at the end of the day. The parents would pull up in the cars, and I was what they called a patrol boy. Mm-hmm. And I made sure I got that yellow Mustang convertible.
Oh, man.
The lady that pulled in there was nice as could be. I was an 11-year-old, 10-year-old, I guess. Mm-hmm. And that was the coolest thing around that Mustang. We listened to the World Series, Mickey Mantle, Bob Gibson, as I was waiting for her daughter to come up. And at that point, I was in love with Mustangs.
You know, and that just goes to show you, too, that car addiction runs deep with you.
Oh, yeah.
It runs.
It's my cocaine.
Well, I say car addiction. Mustang addiction.
Yeah.
You are the Mustang guy. So when you finally got one, did it happen to be this one, or did you have a different
one? This was my fourth or fifth Mustang. I currently have 3 Mustangs. Mm-hmm. When I got this one, I had 2 Mustangs. Mm-hmm. The reason I got this one, I was very fortunate in summer of 2019. I had 2 epic events. Okay. I'd always wanted to go to Le Mans for the race. The French say Le Mans, we say Le Mans.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough, you'll see where it says Ganassi Racing.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be accepted as a volunteer with the Ganassi Racing team. They had the Ford GT program.
Oh, wow.
They win the first time at the plate at Le Mans 2016. Mm-hmm. I was up for that whole race. That was Fox Sports 1 and 2, so it was 2 hours at a time. But when they beat Ferrari, I mean, I knew it was someplace I had to go to. I've been to France a few times, but I had a new bucket list. Mm-hmm. A few years later, 2019, if it could go right for me, it did. Me and my EcoBoost went down to Key West, and when I would get a chance to race anybody, stoplight's a stoplight, I beat the fire out of them. Don't let nobody talk bad about an EcoBoost. It was a great drive down there. And then I had the chance to go to France with Ganassi Racing as a volunteer, which to be at Le Mans is one of the greatest experiences. It was one of those things I wanted when I was a kid. In the mid-'60s, I read about Le Mans, like I read about Shelby. Mm-hmm. And I put it on the shelf of one of those places I had to go to. I had to wait a long time to take it off the shelf. But in 2019, I did meet the members of the Ford GT program at the race up in Ohio. I told him how interested I was. A gentleman named Mike Hull said, yep, you come along on your own dime and we'll put you to work. And that's exactly what I did. So my strength is tour guides. I would take people over to the Normandy battlefield before the race to see what happened over there, because it's about 2.5 hours from Normandy to Le Mans. And then they let me be with the team, had the pit pass, and get to do everything with the team for that whole 4 or 5 days.
Okay, so
I stayed out of the way. I didn't get in the way, but I did help.
so you really got to work with the race team then?
Oh, yeah.
The Ford race team.
The Ford Chip Ganassi. Now, Ganassi this year is with Cadillac.
Okay.
So there wasn't a Ford over there for the 100th anniversary. There wasn't a Ford that I know of. There will be next year. The Super Mustang will be there at Le Mans. And I'm thinking real serious about trying to take this car and me over to Europe next year for the Le Mans race.
That would be a real like, lost for words. Trying to figure out, that would be a real experience right there.
Well,
for you, I'm sure. And that would be just an amazing, like, story for your car. Like,
I'm hoping I can do it. At the same time, I got to be honest. I'm 70 years old. To ship the car over there is a real challenge. But the people over in France I've talked to, they seem to want to help. The French don't get the courtesy and recognition they deserve for being so courteous. They've always treated me great, and I've been over there a few times.
Okay.
So if it can happen, I'm going to try to make it happen. It's going to be up to me physically, and it's going to be up to American Express financially.
that would be amazing. And I'm assuming if that happens, you're going to have to call me back out here so that you could tell that story.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, if it happens, believe me, it'll be all over Facebook in a heartbeat.
Well, for now, you've also brought out some of these nice pictures here. Like, can you tell us what these pictures are?
Yeah. Now, this thing that really made me know that there was a higher power planning this, I come back from Le Mans, and if you've ever been to Alabama in the summer, you know every bug in the world has its convention here.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one day I decided I'm just going to drive. It was in July of 2019. I went over to Mississippi to get some of their fancy water they have in Iuka, very high mineral content. Didn't take my cell phone with me. When I get back, there's a message from Shelby American, Human Resources lady, Mrs. Robinson. She said, we saw your resume from when you were here. You said you'd want to be the tour guide. Do you want that? And I said, you better believe it. And he said, it's a long way. And I said, I'll be there on Monday. So I packed up my EcoBoost and drove out to Shelby American and worked there for 2 years as the tour guide and historian. I drove out in an EcoBoost, and it was a dream come true. Now, not only am I working at Shelby American, I'm representing it to 5 or 6 tours a day. And it was an absolute thrill to get to work there. The people wanted to learn, and I made sure they got it. But I didn't have a Shelby yet. Now, I'm not a computer guy. If you want to, I've put a lot of computers into therapy. I'm absolutely horrible with computers. But one of my responsibilities was to look at computers, the automotive news on my computer between the tours. And it just jumped out. Straight from Vegas, Shelby GT. Basically, the computer was saying, if you don't buy this, you're an idiot. So it was at a brokerage firm up in Detroit. I worked at Shelby American. The guys out there were great. So I said, what about a 2007 Shelby GT with 54,000 miles on it? They are so good there that they could tell me the cars, the Ford Mustang GTs would come to Shelby. Ford parts go off, Shelby parts go on, done by Shelby technicians. They could tell me who did what on what day on that car, who did the suspension, who did the engine upgrades, all that. And they said, that car is as close to bulletproof as you're going to get. That 4.6 without the supercharger is, when you take it to the track, all you have to do is check the tire pressure. She is as ready as a car can be. Now, I'm not a track guy. I know if I was to wreck a Shelby, I would have to go to hell. There's just no question about it. But when I got this one, I thought this is part of my dream come true from the 60s. I now own a Shelby. So I worked at Shelby and I owned a Shelby. So when you see the Terralingua racing team there, Shelby was a really good partier. It's a good question. Did he have 5 wives or did he have 10 wives? But he loved to party. And he did buy some land in South Texas near the town of Terralingua. It had an old beat-up military runway from World War II. Shelby had an old beat-up C-47 or DC-3, and it could just make it there. Now, Shelby bought a lot of land in Terralingua, so he's the king of Terralingua. Nobody can give him a ticket because he's the police chief. If he does give himself a ticket, he's the judge. He can dismiss it. But that's where the word Terralingua Racing Team comes from. Now, Ford got with Shelby in about 66, 67, said, see what you can do with the Mustang. The GT, the Mustang turned into a racing car, and that became the Shelby GT 350. And that was the backbone of the Shelby, of the Terralingua Racing Team. American flag speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah.
Gulf was the gas of choice, pretty much in Europe, and I spent a lot of years in the 75th Ranger Regiment.
And we definitely thank you for the service on that.
Yeah,
one. So,
thank you for all the money you're going to spend to keep my nasty old ass alive. Taxpayers aren't getting a good deal with me because I'm going to live a long time. Now this picture over here, I hope you can see it.
I'll be taking some up close of them.
Okay,
So,
but she's as close to Dolly Parton as I'm ever going to get. Her name is Linda Vaughn. She was Miss Hurst Shifter. If you're an old guy like me, you look at her and you forget to blink. Now, she was the girl who would always kiss the drivers in the victory circle after the race. She only did it for like 50 years. And I got lucky enough in Las Vegas when I worked there that she autographed this car. So you'll get to see that in a little bit.
yeah, so that autograph is on your dash here. Now, I think there's multiple autographs
Yeah.
up there, though. So who else has signed that dash for you?
The first paid employee of Shelby Americans, a little bit questionable or controversial. Joan Sherman, the secretary, will say she was. Peter Brock, who ran Shelby's first race team, will say he was. So you can, depending on who you want to come down on their side. But Peter Brock was incredibly important in the formative years of Shelby. They didn't talk about him in the movie any, but they did show the GT40 just a little bit. GT40 was Shelby's answer to go to Europe and race. The Shelby AC Cobras just did not have it for Europe. They cleaned up in America, but the longer tracks, they just couldn't do it. The 289 was a great engine. Aerodynamically, it was a brick. They gave a mission to Peter Brock. No money, not much of a team. See if you can turn it into a race car. And if you look at the Daytona Coupe from that era, it's got different names. The biggest thing Peter Brock did, he was a brilliant man because he had worked with General Motors. He was the chief designer in the late 50s for the 63 Corvette Stingray. So when Shelby had it, this guy signed up for Shelby, Shelby got a genius. One thing about Shelby, he knew how to get good people around him. They might not have stayed forever, but his core, his ability to get good people around him was easily one of the biggest reasons for his success. Peter Brock stayed with him for a few years, and I was lucky enough, Brock is out in Henderson, Nevada, with Brock Racing Enterprises. If you ever go to Las Vegas, figure out a way to swing by Brock Racing Enterprises. Peter Brock, 80, 85 years old, moves like a cat. When he took me into his garage, he said, now be careful, I gotta find the light. Well, I wasn't moving. And he's getting through that garage and he showed me his Daytona Coupe. Daytona Coupe is, made 6 of them, beautiful cars, rough cars. Now don't get me wrong, the Shelby's cars were rough.
I'll show a picture right here so everybody knows.
But they were wicked, wicked fast. They could handle great, but you knew you were sitting in a race car designed for racing, not for comfort if you were in one of the Shelbys from back then.
Yeah.
Okay. When I got this car in November of 2019, I did a huge amount of Shelby study. It was an honor to give the tours out there. I would try to make different people, different characters. I would make one person Enzo Ferrari, and he would have a Ferrari hat. And I would make one person Carroll Shelby, and he'd have a cowboy hat. We had lines they would have to say. They would call each other names. And it was a tremendous amount of fun to get to do that. I would start with the pictures of Shelby, and we'd talk all about the great Shelby cars, particularly keying on the Le Mans race of '66. Now, the movie came out in November of 19, Ford versus Ferrari. So I was the historian at Shelby American. My history degree from Alabama makes me a little bit of a history nosy guy. So I did a tremendous amount of research on Shelby and the Le Mans race. So the movie, I give it a B- for accuracy and then A+ for entertainment. Plus it does the most honest thing it can do. It says based on a true story.
Okay.
So I will watch that movie once a month still. I've only seen it 150 times. But I would make somebody, she doesn't get the credit she deserves for being, I'll say, the key to the ignition. And that was Henry Ford's wife, Christina. They kind of glossed over her in the movie. Now, Henry Ford was going through a midlife crisis. His gorgeous wife and him get divorced in the early 60s. And he meets Christina, who is one knockout beauty from Italy. And she like to say, she made him feel tremendously eager and young again. But she would say to him, you know, I don't see anything that looks like a Ferrari. Ford doesn't have anything. So that was one of the things they didn't talk about in the movie, was she was a little bit of impetus on that. Now, my gut instinct is if she hadn't been there to turn the key, he never would have been all that enthused about taking on and buying or taking on Ferrari. Remember, he wanted to buy it originally, and my gut instinct is if she hadn't been there, he wouldn't have had Ford versus Ferrari. Fact is, I'll just about bet every dollar I have on that. And she was gorgeous, gracious, Italian. They said when she put a bikini on, everybody forgot to blink. If you ever watch video from the victory, almost any victory race, any victory, they have the ceremony, and the drivers gets the champagne, and they spray everybody. Now, where did that start at? 66 and 67 Le Mans. Now, in 66, Ford is sending everybody over there. I think they sent 8 cars. Mrs. Ford, Christina, bet $1,000 that the Ferraris would win. So this didn't go over very good with everybody who had worked really hard for that. So the next year, Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt drive the GT40 Mark IV to victory. And she was there. So Dan Gurney gets that bottle of champagne. Used to be they just drink it. He shook it up really good. And who's the first person he sprayed? Mrs. Henry Ford II. And I think she knew it was coming because you looked at the picture. She had a raincoat on. It wasn't raining, and she had some sort. And her great words were, "Dan, my hair." So I would always try to recreate that. The movie was brilliant. It talks about the '66 race. But if I had an unlimited budget, I would make the next movie Ford versus Ferrari versus Porsche. Because Ford wins with the GT40 Mark IV in '67. Ford pulls its support, and the same people who had the GT40 Program originally, John Wyer gets it again, but Gulf is the sponsor this time. And they win at Le Mans in 68 and 69 in the 289 engine. Might have been beefed up to a 302. So you had 4 years in a row that Ford Motor Company, who I'm a huge enthusiast of, wins at Le Mans. To do anything 4 years in a row, the odds are millions to one. They did it 4 years in a row with 2 different teams.
Especially with some big names like Porsche and Ferrari, because
Well,
I'm sure they weren't happy about an American company coming out to their event and dominating.
if they were glad that Ferrari got beat. Porsche was.
Yeah.
They, whoever the head person was at Porsche that was there, comes up and hugs Shelby, says thank you for beating him. Ferrari would be a little bit like Alabama. You either loved them, for the most part, everybody hated them, because they win and they win and they win. Maybe they bend the rules, maybe they don't. But the next couple of years, Porsche really expected to win. The closest finish ever at Le Mans history was the 69 Le Mans with the Ford GT, 12 seconds between first and second place.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
like I say, if I had the unlimited budget, as much as I love my Mustangs, I wouldn't make a movie about Mustangs. I would talk about those next 3 years that Ford was there. That 4 years in a row at Le Mans is incredible. And, to get back to this one, I want to talk about Shelby a little bit. This is probably going to be my last unique that I learned about Shelby's story.
Okay.
He was married at least 5 times. Some people say 10. Dan Gurney said nobody could be more economical with the truth than Carroll Shelby was. If he wanted to stretch a tail, he would stretch a tail. Now, Shelby was surprised as anybody that his cars, his Mustangs from the 60s, become such collectors. He just wasn't ready for that. He let a huge money out the door. Those Daytona coupes I was telling you about, there's 6 of them are still alive. And they'll be at Goodwood at the Classics festivals, and you can't get near one for less than $2 million. Shelby is ready to say dump them in the ocean. But if you look on all the different Shelby sites, people will say, I only have 2,000 miles on my car. I only have 3,000 miles on my car. I got it from a very, very reliable source who knew Shelby, worked out there, knew him. He said, Shelby occasionally would show up at the factory on a Saturday. At that time, the factory was out near the racetrack. And he would sign different things. And there was a bunch of people with their Shelbys there. And I don't know if there were 500 or what. Hey, I got me Shelby. And Shelby had 4 guys there. And he said, how many miles do you have on your car? And the guy says, I've only got 1,000. How many do you have on your car? 1,500. How many do you have on your car? Not many, less than 1,000. The 4th guy, which might have been you, he says, how many miles do you have on your car? And he goes, well, I drive my car. I got 30,000 miles on it. Shelby says, you're going with me, and I'm going to give you a personally guided tour of the facility here. And you other guys, you're supposed to drive your Shelby. He pushed that. You didn't get a Shelby to look at, you got a Shelby to drive. That being the case, I bought this car almost 4 years ago with 53,000. I now have 94,000 miles on it.
Oh yeah.
When you drive this car, I've got it fixed up, but it is a head turner. Now they're not looking at me, they're looking at one of the most unique names in American automotive history.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I really can't think of too much more than I can add to it, other than it was a dream come true to work at Shelby American. And I am now driving part 2 of that dream come true.
Well, man, if you can't think anything, how about we get to hearing this thing run then?
Let's do it, baby doll.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So there you have it, Mike Dempsey and his 2007 Shelby GT. Man, this is cool. I love your story. I love your car. It's just a wild story. I love it, dude. Like you got to do everything that you dreamed of, or at least what it sounds like you dreamed of. And I'm hoping that you're still dreaming, you're still pushing for it, because you got that trip to France coming up.
I hope all that comes together.
Definitely, man. And but I do want to ask you, where was this that you worked as a tour guide?
In Las Vegas, Nevada, very close to the Strip, very close to the airport,
Okay.
is 6405 Innsworth, if you're going to do the Earth Google or whatever you do it.
Okay.
It's right off the interstate. It's a tremendously large facility. The cars will get there as Mustang GTs, and they will leave there as supercars. Now, to watch these guys work was one of the biggest thrills I had. These are first-rate young people. Well, most of them are young, and they're just so meticulous with these cars. So they'll come in there as a good Mustang GT, but they will leave there as supercars. Now, I've got 3 Mustangs. All 3 of my Mustangs have been out to Shelby American. Is there a magic to it? You tell me. You put the combined mileage of my 3 Mustangs together, I got over 500,000 miles of Mustang. Original engines. 2 of them have the original transmission. I've worn out seats. I've worn out windshields, but I never wear out the car itself. Tires, of course, brakes, of course. But 6405 Innsworth, Las Vegas, Nevada, Shelby American is the place to go. If you're going to take a tour of Las Vegas, they charge a little bit now. When I was there, it was free, but it's a different world now. But you will see the finest cars in America go from start to finish. Take your time on the tours or just walk through the facility they have there. But if you want to see that name as represented as it should be, which is the best name, go to Shelby American 6405 Innsworth, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Definitely check that out, guys. And Mike, is there anything you would like to say to anyone that may be watching out there in YouTube land?
I can't understand YouTube. I'm terrible at this stuff. But I'm really thrilled to get to talk about my Shelby. And all I will say is if you're young, you're going to be old someday. Enjoy getting there. But when you're old, try to think back what you really wanted to do when you were young. And I'm lucky enough that in my 60s, I'm able to do what was important to me in the 1960s. That's about all I can add.
Man, well, that's awesome. Thanks for having me out here, man. I greatly appreciate it. I want to shake your hand.
Thank you.
You know, and I tell you, with that, I'm going to have you back again, hopefully, talk about some of your other cars here at some point. And I want to hear about you going to France, so please.
Well, it'll be next summer. If everything goes right, I'm going to take enough fake IDs and go to Europe. So they'll say, who was that old guy? And I said, well, it couldn't have been me. But I'm looking forward to it. I really want to drive from racetrack to racetrack. I want to go to Goodwood. I want to go to Spa. At the same time, I'm thinking, I've done my bucket list already. Do I really want to tip the bucket over? I've done it. Can I improve upon 2019? I don't know how.
You just put another bucket on top and start filling it up.
I don't know.
I tell you though, with that, man, we're going to have to get out of here.
Okay.
We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
I'll see you at the next car show, okay?
There you have it, folks. Be sure you like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.